Time for Ty to take the wheel. Gideon Rusk said it like he was ordering coffee. We were in the upstairs glass box they called a boardroom at North Star Cryologistics, overlooking the Memphis tarmac where cargo planes taxied like patient sharks. He leaned back, cuffs immaculate, the kind of Old South charm that made vendors say yes to bad deals and believe they were smart for it. My name is Rowan Mercer, 51, ex-operations mathematician turned fixer. I had spent 7 years dragging Gideon's company out of the sludge, out of late trucks, spoiled biologics, and FDA audits that set off alarms. When I walked in, North Star was a regional courier with a cold chain problem and a prayer. Now it was a name you whispered when you needed immunotherapy vials to land at 2:14 a.m. and still read 2 to 8 degrees Celsius at 8:30 on the dot. Ty Rusk sat to Gideon's right. Light blue suit, socks too loud. The MBA sheen that says, "I've presented about logistics." He'd been inside the building for 2 years, mostly in client dinners and brand workshops. He smiled at me like he'd just been handed a vintage car he didn't know had a manual transmission. "Rowan, you've built a hell of a machine," Gideon said, palms open like a preacher. "But North Star needs a face for the future, a Rusk at the helm. Continuity, legacy. Our clients expect that." I looked past them to the warehouse floor. On the monitors, our sensor grid flickered, telemetry from pallet probes, passive RFID tags, battery life on active shippers. A live mosaic of thermals and clocks. Forklifts were staging outbound to Coral Gables and Tacoma in a choreography that used to be chaos. Now it was a metronome. "Congratulations," I said, because Tennessee taught me to keep a straight face in a room like this. What I didn't say, they confused the dashboard with the engine. Ty followed my gaze and nodded toward the screens like he'd designed them. "We've been talking about storytelling, Rowan," he said. "People by the North Star way, not just algorithms and sensors." He let the last word drift like it was an afterthought, a garnish. I sipped water and counted 3 beats, enough to smile without showing teeth. "You've done incredible work," Gideon continued, "and we'll make sure you're taken care of. Generous package. Senior advisory title if you want it. You've earned a softer seat." I had earned a lot of things. A softer seat wasn't on the list. On the hallway wall outside the glass box is a backlit metrics ribbon Ty championed, animated numbers that roll like slot reels. $18 million, $62 million annual revenue, 98.7% on time, 43% spoilage reduction, 0 critical deviations in the last 18 months. People stop there to take pictures. Vendors post it on LinkedIn with handshake emojis. The ribbon never shows paperwork, the CFR citations closed, the CAPAs that didn't explode, the field trainings where I taught drivers what humidity does to phase change packs at altitude. There's a quiet rule in logistics. If it looks smooth, someone is bleeding off-screen. Ty rested his elbows on the table in a way that said he'd practiced the pose. "We'll need you to walk me through the back end, though," he added. "The route optimizer, the thermal forecasts, what do you call it? Interlock?" "Interlock," I said. "The rule engine that ties forecast, inventory, and regulatory constraints so no lane gets booked if the risk exceeds threshold." "Right," he said, as if that cleared it up. "I'll pick it up fast." Gideon slid a folder toward me. It wasn't a contract. It was a ceremony. The kind of paper with tabs and placeholders so you know your role is to initial and nod. "We'll phase this over the next 6 weeks," he said. "You'll stay visible for customers. Ty will take lead in QBRs. We're not changing the recipe, just the chef's hat." I turned the folder, read nothing, and set it down. I could recite the recipe from memory. We'd built the thing in layers. Frost, my constraint solver that scores temperature excursion risk by lane and hour. Trace, the microservice that reconciles sensor data and flags drift before it becomes a deviation. Harmony, the ETA model that eats weather, air traffic delays, and carrier behavior for breakfast. 3 cores tied to a gatekeeper that never books a route the way a human gut would, unless the numbers bless it. The part Gideon never felt in his bones. None of that lives inside North Star. The IP sits with me, licensed to North Star under my holding company, Mercer Vector LLC. Royalty rate tied to lanes passed through Frost. Termination clause triggered if active operational authority by the patent holder ended or was materially reduced. I'd written that clause during the winter we missed a Friday in Omaha because a supervisor overrode Trace to keep a promise. Clients forgive a late cabinet. They don't forgive thawed immunotherapy. Ty stood, hand extended. I appreciate your mentorship, he said, and I believed he meant it. He was not malicious. He was miseducated. Of course, I said, happy to make sure the handoff is clean. Gideon beamed. See? That's the North Star spirit. Legacy and innovation together. I shook both hands, measured, cordial. No drama. On my way back downstairs, I passed the metrics ribbon. I also passed the 2 photos Ty had replaced last month. Grainy shots of our first Houston lane during that February freeze, and a frayed Polaroid of Gideon's dad beside a box truck that had more rust than paint. In their place, a glossy team portrait and a tagline Ty's agency loved. Cold precision, warm service. The line tested well. Warmth always does. At my desk, I opened Harmony in maintenance mode. 89 lanes pulsed green. 3 were amber, 1 red. Denver's overnight humidity spike combined with a carrier swap out of Ontario. A human would proudly make the call. Harmony had already rerouted. No one would notice. The phone wouldn't ring. That's how you know it's working. My inbox blipped. Ty had sent me a calendar invite titled Back-End Deep Dive, Fast Track. 90 minutes, 2 days from now. Room, the summit. Attendees Ty, me, a junior analyst named Paisley who knows the difference between coolant bricks and phase change packs because she used to drive a route. I accepted the invite. Then I opened a different folder, one the ribbon doesn't advertise. Licenses, filings, provisional patents, the letters from the winter Omaha miss where I'd learned the right fear. I scrolled to the clause everyone schemes. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a pilot who knows which fuse will blow first. On the warehouse floor, a driver named Kian waved from the staging dock. He still says sir to me, no matter how many times I tell him not to. He once iced a cooler with his own hands for an extra 20 minutes because a flight slid right, and he couldn't stand the thought of a kid missing a dosage window. He doesn't post ribbons. He doesn't say legacy. He says, we're good. And he means the drug and the human who needs it. We're good, I called back. I wasn't lying. Not yet. The thing about engines, you can polish the hood and swap the driver, but the car still runs on what's under the metal. If you don't know where the oil goes, the silence you love will be the first thing to leave. I closed the maintenance console and stared for a long time at the word interlock on the screen. Somewhere upstairs, Ty was talking about storytelling. Down here, the story had rules. Numbers that do not care about promises. In 2 days, I'd start telling Ty how it all worked. And in 3 weeks, if the papers on Gideon's table turned into signatures, the engine wouldn't belong to North Star anymore. Ty called it a tech stack. That was his term in the kickoff meeting 2 days later, scribbled on a whiteboard next to phrases like delivery cadence, data layer, and experience design. I let him talk. Sometimes the best way to gauge a man's understanding is to watch what he's proud to say out loud. This tech stack Rowan built, Ty said to the small group in the summit conference room, it's impressive, but what matters now is usability, scalability. What's under the hood is important, sure, but what really counts is how the client feels when they interact with us. I looked over at Paisley Ward, our junior analyst, who hadn't said a word since we walked in. Her eyes flicked toward me with a question she didn't voice. She had seen enough cold chain chaos in her first 6 months to know the difference between client feelings and organ viability. Rowan, Ty said brightly, why don't you walk us through the core modules? He turned toward the screen like he was teeing me up for a TED Talk. I nodded and brought up the slide deck, one I'd made a year ago for a biotech client who actually cared about how the vials got there cold. Let's start with the basics, I said. You've got 3 primary systems: Frost, Trace, and Harmony. Together, they feed into our decision gatekeeper, Interlock, which greenlights or denies all cold chain routes based on composite risk. Ty blinked once. Okay, but like, at a high level? This is the high level. I clicked forward. Frost wasn't just an acronym. It was a constraint engine that calculated environmental risk minute by minute. It ingested NOAA data, airport tarmac temperature trends, carrier delay probability, package insulation degradation curves, and even loading dock proximity. Frost scores every leg of a route, I explained, on a probability curve. A 9:30 p.m. pickup in Phoenix with a handoff in O'Hare, 2 a.m. local. During snow season, with a temperature-sensitive payload, you'll get an amber or red risk. Frost will auto-deny that booking unless overrides are cleared through interlock. Paisley nodded slightly. She'd seen Frost deny a last-minute request from a hospital in Santa Fe during a late-summer heatwave. Ty had called it a missed opportunity. The hospital had called 2 days later to say the competitor's shipment had arrived at 14 degrees Celsius. The dosage window was blown. Ty scribbled autobook logic in the corner of his notebook and moved on. Trace, I continued, reconciles real-time data from all the active sensors on a route. Temp, humidity, GPS, and passive motion triggers. It flags thermal drift early enough to act. Ty perked up. That's the notification engine, right? Push alerts. No, I said. It's the thing that prevents you from needing push alerts. He smiled like I was joking. Harmony was the showstopper. It modeled expected delivery windows using weather forecasts, aircraft gate data, TSA backlog trends, even road closures scraped from DOT alerts. It created surgical ETAs with variants so tight that some hospitals started aligning infusion appointments to our arrival times. That's why our standard deviation sits at 3.4 minutes across 68% of routes, I said. Okay, so these are all just enhancements to traditional shipping workflows, Ty said. The core is still transport, right? Planes, trucks, boxes. And blood, I added. And vaccines. And live tissue. You can't afford redose when the payload expires before the paperwork. He laughed. Right? High stakes. He didn't get it. He thought this was about logistics. It wasn't. It was about time manipulation. Cold chain isn't about trucks or boxes. It's about creating artificial time, buying hours with insulation, trading minutes with predictive routing, stealing seconds with thermal inertia. Every route was a countdown. Every delay a slow-motion expiration. Frost, Trace, and Harmony weren't tools. They were temporal life support, and Ty wanted to rebrand them. He called them our differentiators. In his head, they were features on a web page. In the field, they were the only reason no one had ever had to send an apology call to a transplant nurse. After the meeting, Paisley walked with me to the back hallway where the mainframe servers hummed. That room was climate-controlled like a cryochamber, 38 degrees Fahrenheit, 45% humidity. She looked over. He doesn't know. No, I said. And he doesn't know that he doesn't know. That's the worst kind. She paused, looked at the heavy glass door that housed the interlock servers, and whispered, "You're not really going to give it to him, are you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pointed at the indicator panel. Each module had a green LED next to its name. One had started blinking amber. Frost is flagging the JFK to Spokane handoff. I said, winter surge is kicking in early this year. She didn't ask if I was talking about the weather. 3 days later, I walked into Gideon's office at 9 a.m. sharp. The old man was already there, sipping chicory coffee from a stoneware mug that probably predated the internet. He looked up, smiling like nothing had ever cracked. "Rowan," he said warmly, "you look rested." Ty said the tech review went smooth. I nodded. "He's getting familiar." Good. I always knew you'd be the kind of man who could let go with grace. A mentor." He handed me a leather-bound folder, North Star blue with the embossed company seal. It was thick but not heavy, a gesture disguised as paperwork. "This is the transition agreement," Gideon said. 6 weeks of structured handoff. Client continuity, internal comms. Same title through the end of the quarter. Clean optics. I opened the folder. No surprises. Severance, NDA, mutual non-disparagement clause, 1 paragraph of consultation availability. A line item buried in the back. All proprietary systems developed during employment remain the property of North Star Cryologistics. I paused. Section 14.3, I said quietly. That conflicts with the licensing agreement between North Star and Mercer Vector LLC. Gideon blinked. What? The software, the optimization models, the predictive layers, the telemetry mesh, they're not North Star's property. They're Mercer Vector's. Licensed. Commercial use only. Termination clauses apply. He furrowed his brow like I'd spoken another language. Come on, Rowan. You built it here. For us, that makes it internal. No, Gideon. I built it before you even called me. I brought the systems in under license. We negotiated those terms when you were 3 weeks from being delisted by the FDA. He opened his mouth but didn't speak. The silence gave me time to pull my own folder from my briefcase. Black, matte, with tabs marked in red. I spread the pages across his desk slowly. Patent filings. Licensing schedules. Clause excerpts highlighted in surgical yellow. Ty walked in halfway through the silence, holding a protein shake. Morning, he said, upbeat. What are we working on? This, I said, sliding the highlighted license clause toward him, is the section you overlooked. Ty read the first few lines and immediately tilted his head. Wait, are you saying we don't own any of the core systems? You license them, I said. That license continues as long as I hold active operational control. If that ends, so does the access. He frowned. That can't be right. Page 6, I said. Paragraph 4. Gideon stared at the table. The kind of stare that doesn't blink. This is not what we agreed to, he muttered. It's exactly what you agreed to, I replied. You just didn't think I'd ever leave. Ty dropped into a chair. So what? You're going to take the software with you? I'm not taking anything, I said. You're just choosing to release it by ending my operational role. That's insane. That's law. Ty stood, voice rising. You'd let the company fall apart over semantics? Over paperwork. It's not semantics, I said. It's infrastructure. He turned to Gideon. We need legal to review this. They already did, I said, tapping the folder. Last week. Gideon looked at me with something halfway between betrayal and regret. But it was neither. It was the realization that a man who builds foundations also knows where the load-bearing walls are. I'll give you a proposal, I said calmly. A structured transition. 3 weeks of continued access. Limited support. After that, full revocation. Or we renegotiate a new license from scratch. Ty scoffed. You want us to pay again for what you built on our dime? I built it, I said. On my patents. With my IP. You used it. Legally. Until now. Gideon didn't argue. Not right away. He sat down slowly and ran his thumb across the edge of the North Star seal on the leather folder like it meant something anymore. I don't want this to get ugly, he said. It's not ugly, I said. It's precise. I gathered the documents back into my case, closed it with care and stood. By next Friday, I said, the access restrictions begin. Ty was still trying to process it all when I left. He didn't realize it yet, but the system he thought was a tech stack was actually a lifeline. And in 6 business days, that lifeline would be unplugged. By Tuesday, legal had caught up. Their reply arrived via a partner at a boutique tech/IP firm in Nashville. Someone with a LinkedIn profile full of cryptic awards and a face built for arbitration. The email, CC'd to both Gideon and Ty, began with a line I'd been waiting for. After reviewing the original licensing agreements between Mercer Vector LLC and North Star Cryologistics, we confirm the validity and enforceability of the intellectual property terms outlined by Mr. Mercer. Gideon didn't respond for 12 hours. When he finally did, it was a one-liner. Let's talk options. We met in the smaller of the 2 conference rooms. No glass, no view of the tarmac, just 4 walls and a silent ceiling fan. The room where they usually handled termination paperwork and vendor disputes. Gideon looked tired. Not defeated, he was never that, but aged in the way only a proud man gets when the rules stop bending in his favor. We didn't understand what we were licensing, he said flatly. I did, I replied. Ty sat at the far end of the table, arms folded tight across his chest like he was cold, or bracing for a hit. "You built it all outside our systems?" he asked. "Every part. Built, tested, encrypted, deployed under cloud authorization," I said. "The core engines run on secure remote servers. What you see on-site is a front-end UI with limited offline capability." "What about the training docs?" Ty asked. "We were gonna onboard 2 new ops leads." "Redacted," I said. "Protected behind admin tokens. So we have what? A pretty dashboard and no keys." "Correct." Gideon exhaled. "So what are you offering?" "A clean handoff," I said. 3 weeks of support. After that, you either build your own systems or negotiate a new license." Ty leaned forward. "How much for a new license?" "Depends on the terms," I said. "If I'm not operationally involved, it's a commercial license. Royalty-based. Minimum $1.2 million per year, escalating. Plus access fees, maintenance, and a service-level agreement." "That's extortion," Ty snapped. "No," I replied. "That's a discount." Gideon steepled his fingers, eyes on the wall clock. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of refrigeration compressors, Northstar's heartbeat. "You understand what happens if the system fails, right?" he said. "I understand exactly," I replied. "Your clients lose trust. FDA scrutiny increases. Delivery variances start creeping back in. And you begin to feel what it was like 7 years ago." Ty tried again. "Couldn't we just hire a dev team? Rebuild it?" "Sure," I said. "Give them 18 months, 3 failed prototypes, and a $4 million burn rate. And don't forget, some of the core processes are protected under patent." "You patented route logic?" "Route logic, phase transition compensation protocols, cold chain stability scoring models, and a method for predictive scheduling under compound constraints." Ty went pale. Gideon rubbed his temples. "What if we gave you a new position, kept you on paper? Advisory role. Section 12.1, I said. "Licensing remains active only under conditions of active operational control. Not advisory. Not symbolic. Hands-on." He looked at me then, not as a subordinate, not even as a partner. As a man who had just realized he traded the steering wheel for the hood ornament. "You played the long game. I protected what I built." Gideon said nothing more. But Ty did. "This company was built on relationships," he snapped. "Not just math and code." "And yet," I said, "it's the math and code that delivers your promises." I left the room without shaking hands. Ty stayed behind, probably making a mental list of quick fixes that wouldn't work. Gideon sat quietly, staring at the contract folder like it might rewrite itself if he glared hard enough. They weren't evil men, just men who had mistaken the system for the operator. And now they were about to learn what happens when the operator takes the system with him. That Friday, before dawn, I unlocked the downtown Memphis co-working space I'd quietly leased 2 months earlier under Mercer Vector LLC. It didn't look like much, just a corner office with fiber internet, bulletproof HVAC, and an $11,000 server cabinet humming behind a biometric lock. But it was the nerve center of everything Northstar had been running on. That morning, I began what I called internally the extraction protocol. Every system I'd licensed to Northstar had a failover shell, a mirrored environment outside their firewall, accessible only by me. It wasn't sabotage. It was insurance. The licensing agreement allowed me to terminate runtime access upon the conclusion of active operational engagement. The sequence took 3 hours. Frost was the first. I initiated token rotation, rerouting all real-time scoring to the Mercer Vector endpoint. From the Northstar UI, nothing changed. But inside, scoring decisions now flowed through a proprietary logic gate I alone controlled. The override switch was disabled. Trace followed. I flipped the webhook settings. All incoming sensor data, temp logs, GPS pings, motion spikes was now mirrored in Mercer servers. Their dashboards still lit up. But the drift logic, the anticipatory flags, the auto-escalations, all logic scaffolding gone. Finally, Harmony, the ETA engine. This one I adjusted in layers. For now, it kept operating as usual, But by Monday, it would start returning partial confidence flags, forcing manual review of route selections. The first signs wouldn't be dramatic, just small slips, minutes that shouldn't slip. The dashboard looked normal, but the heartbeats were synthetic now, a looped echo of what had once been living intelligence. At 10:17 a.m., I received a Slack ping from Paisley. Paisley Ward. Hey, I think the ETA variance just jumped on the Salt Lake route. Any chance Harmony's glitching? I replied with a wave emoji and a timestamped log. Rowan Mercer. No glitch. Partial confidence flag. Looks like the new ops lead forgot to input cargo thermal rating. Harmony can't predict what it doesn't know. She reacted with a skull emoji. By noon, I was sitting in my old office at North Star, the same space where I'd spent nights refining algorithms that could predict lane volatility with 92% accuracy, while the rest of the floor ordered takeout and patted each other on the back for operational excellence. Ty walked in unannounced, holding 2 Red Bulls and that tech bro optimism that makes you believe spreadsheets can substitute for intuition. You good? He asked. I'm excellent, I said. Just checking. You've been quiet. I'm transitioning, I said. He nodded. I've been thinking maybe we rework the UI, modernize the front end, integrate it with Salesforce. It's clunky, right? I tilted my head. What problem are you trying to solve? He hesitated. Just make it feel fresher. That's the kind of thinking that turns mission-critical into a PowerPoint. He half laughed, half grimaced. Well, I've got a vision for where we're headed. You'd better, I said, because soon, the autopilot turns off. That weekend, I reviewed all service-level triggers. I scheduled a series of graceful deactivations, none of them instant, none catastrophic. Just quiet removals of predictive scaffolding. No more preemptive humidity reroutes. No more early warnings for thermal drift. No more split-second recalculations at the gate in Cincinnati when cloud cover throws expected tarmac temps off by 4 degrees. By Sunday night, I uploaded the final deployment patch. It contained the self-expiring logic that would begin to dismantle North Star's artificial advantage the moment my employment terminated. At the top of the screen, a line of code blinked once. Hashtag initiate end-of-service protocol upon event. Role.termination equals true. I closed the laptop. Systems don't need revenge. They just need distance. And when they're built right, they don't crash. They fade quietly, predictably, and on schedule. Tuesday afternoon, the summit room was filled with cameras, catered coffee, and curated smiles. Gideon had scheduled a leadership continuity briefing for key clients, subcontractors, and local press. Ty stood near the podium, rehearsing his speech with the kind of casual energy only possible when you think nothing can go wrong. I stood in the back, near the A/V setup, sipping stale conference room coffee from a compostable cup. Everyone who mattered was in the room. Our top clients from biotech firms, logistics partners from Kansas City to Charleston, even a representative from the National Institute of Biologics Transport, the ones who measure delivery performance in decimals, not adjectives. 3:01 p.m. Gideon stepped up to the mic. Thank you all for being here, he began. Today is not about change. It's about evolution. He smiled that Rusk family smile, the kind that comes pre-printed on Christmas cards. Rowan Mercer has been a cornerstone of North Star Cryologistics. His work has helped build the foundation we stand on today. Polite applause. I nodded once. And as we look to the future, we're proud to place that foundation in the capable hands of my son, Ty Rusk, who has shown outstanding leadership, vision, and commitment to our mission of precision and trust. Stronger applause this time. The kind clients give when they're not sure if something's actually good news. Ty stepped up, adjusted the mic, and launched into his speech. He talked about next-gen optimization. He mentioned client-facing simplicity. He name-dropped relationship-first innovation. It was heavy on tone, light on substance. A few clients looked at each other when he said, "We're not changing how we deliver, just how we talk about it." Then came the questions. From the floor, a voice I recognized, Dr. Carmen Ellis, head of clinical supply for a major immunotherapy firm in Denver. Will the routing models still incorporate real-time climate overlays and airport tarmac sensor data? She asked flatly. Ty blinked. Absolutely. We're committed to the same high standards. Who's overseeing the calibration parameters? There was a long pause. I could see the moment Ty realized he didn't know what she meant. Another client raised a hand. Your last QBR said your ETA variance was down to 3.4 minutes per lane. Will that be maintained post-transition? We expect continued excellence, Ty said, smiling too wide. Our culture is strong. Culture doesn't do math. The event ended in polite applause. As people filtered out, I handed Gideon my formal resignation, printed, signed, and stapled in triplicate. On the front was a cover letter detailing the termination of all intellectual property licenses, with a 72-hour countdown before deactivation. Rowan, he said quietly, reading the title page, you'd really let it all go dark? I'm not letting anything go dark, I said. You are. Ty walked up mid-conversation. What's this? He asked, thumbing through the pages. The terms you never read, I said. He looked panicked. Wait, you can't just pull the plug. That's sabotage. It's enforcement, I corrected. The agreement was explicit. When my role ends, so does access. But we're already mid-transition, Ty insisted. I'm sitting in on all the meetings. I've shadowed 5 site reviews. That's not how systems work, I said. You can't shadow an algorithm. That night, I locked my office for the last time. Paisley came by with a box of energy bars and a card that said you're not replaceable. I didn't open it until I got home. Inside, she'd scribbled a line. You weren't just building software. You were buying us time. She understood. She always did. Wednesday passed quietly. Thursday morning at 7 a.m. on the dot, the first error hit. Frost returned a blank scoring matrix for a route through Minneapolis. Trace reported, data sync unavailable. Harmony started flashing false ETAs and degraded confidence intervals. At 7:12 a.m., I got a text from Ty. Systems glitching. Can you jump on a call? At 7:17 a.m. Another. Please. Clients are asking questions. I didn't respond. The clock had started. By Thursday afternoon, North Star Cryologistics was burning daylight, and nobody knew how to stop the clock. The first call came from Carmen Ellis in Denver. Ty says your systems are under maintenance. Our delivery just missed by 47 minutes. The blood panels are garbage now. What's going on? I told her the truth. The systems aren't under maintenance. They're offline. She didn't yell. She just said, damn. Inside North Star, chaos was taking shape in the way only logistics chaos does. Not explosions, not red lights, just silence where precision used to be. ETA dashboards showed false positives. No early reroutes. No temperature drift flags. Manual override requests stacked up in folders Ty didn't know existed. One route was booked through Chicago Midway, ignoring a low-cloud alert. By the time the package landed in Tulsa, the vial temperature had reached 12.1 to 2.1 degrees above the maximum threshold. Unusable. By Friday, clients were calling with questions that Ty couldn't answer. Where's the confidence report? What happened to the predictive buffer? Why wasn't the Scottsdale route flagged for humidity spikes? Ty tried. He pulled printouts. He quoted generic phrases. But the engine was gone, and he had no idea how to rebuild it. At 2:37 p.m., Paisley messaged me privately. Paisley, I don't think they understand what they've broken. Rowan, they will. Paisley, clients are asking if you're available. Quietly, Rowan, tell them I'll be announcing availability Monday. Jordan Hayes style. She replied with a smile emoji. That evening, as I poured a scotch in my home office, my phone rang. Gideon. He didn't waste time. We need the systems back. His voice had dropped the charm. It was hoarse, like someone trying to speak while choking on pride. I no longer work for North Star, I said. The licenses are terminated. This will destroy us. It didn't have to. Ty's trying. Ty was handed a machine and thought it ran on intention. Silence. Then, What do you want? I let the question hang in the air like condensation in a cold truck. I don't want anything from you, I said. But I'm starting something new. I call it vector chain systems. And some of your clients have already reached out. You planned this. I prepared for it. We gave you everything. You gave me a deadline. At 7:12 p.m., a junior planner at Northstar posted an internal alert. Manual scheduling override required for 11 active routes. ETA integrity cannot be guaranteed. All route confidence scores. Not applicable. At 7:19 p.m., the Phoenix Oncology Center called Ty directly. They pulled their contract. Systems don't fail like buildings. They decay. The lights stay on. The wheels still turn. But the pulse, the living core, goes silent. By Sunday, Northstar was officially a traditional shipper. A box mover. A courier with a fancy logo and no map. Monday, 8 a.m. I published a short, simple announcement on LinkedIn. Rowan Mercer. Founder. Vector Chain Systems. Precision doesn't happen by accident. I'm proud to announce the launch of Vector Chain Systems, offering advanced cold chain intelligence, predictive routing models, and risk-scored delivery frameworks for the biotech, pharmaceutical, and clinical logistics sectors. Built on patented technologies. Proven in the field. We don't talk about excellence. We engineer it. By lunchtime, I had 5 DMs from former Northstar clients. By Wednesday, 3 of them had signed letters of intent. The biggest? Zurigenics, the immunotherapy firm Carmen ran out of Denver. Their first shipment under Vector Chain was booked for the following Monday. Same lanes. Same operators. Same architecture. Only now the keys were in my hand. Meanwhile, back at Northstar, Ty was hiring freelance developers to replicate Frost and Trace. They didn't get far. The patents were tight, the dependencies dense. They tried scraping data, but they didn't understand the signal-to-noise ratios behind each model. They built something that looked like a dashboard. They just didn't think like one. By the end of the month, they had rebuilt scheduling spreadsheets with UI elements. Clients weren't impressed. Paisley joined Vector Chain by the second week. She came with insight, grit, and the most valuable asset of all. Fluency in what actually mattered. Not slogans. Not slide decks. Risk thresholds. Buffer logic. Sensor crosstalk. She didn't ask for a title. I gave her 2. Director of Implementation and Founding Partner. By the end of Q1, Vector Chain had closed, for national clients, 17 active routes, $19.6 million in projected revenue, and 0 missed windows. Northstar? They had missed 4 delivery deadlines in the first 6 weeks. The Phoenix account dropped entirely. 2 contractors quit citing process uncertainty. FDA sent a preliminary inquiry into recurring variance logs. At 6:43 p.m. on a rainy Thursday, I got one final voicemail from Ty. Rowan, I don't know how you made all this work. I don't even know what to ask you anymore. But if there's any chance you're willing to help, even consult, I'd appreciate it. Just tell me what you'd need. He didn't sound angry. He sounded empty. I didn't respond, because by then we were already modeling a new route for Zurigenics, one that involved real-time air pressure data from mid-altitude altimeters. They'd asked us to try something ambitious, deliver biologics over mountain terrain in winter, under 6 degrees Celsius, with a 24-hour lock window. The old system would have flagged it as impossible. The new one? It didn't just score risk. It solved for it. 6 months later, I was standing in a chilled loading bay in Flagstaff, watching a Vector Chain technician secure the final container in a dry ice hybrid capsule. We'd just completed our most complex route to date. 3 climate zones, 2 cargo handoffs, 0 deviations. Delivery window, 19 minutes. Temp log, 6.3 degrees Celsius plus or minus 0.2. Result, approved on first scan. I wasn't smiling. You don't smile at a system that just saved a child's dose. You just exhale. That night, back at my home office, I opened a padded envelope. Inside, a legal memo, a scanned copy of a sale agreement, and an unsigned handwritten note. Rowan, We've sold North Star to a larger network out of Atlanta. They have their own systems, their own people. Marcus offered us a bridge deal and we took it. Ty's moving to a junior role under their PMO division. The brand is intact. The company is not. You were right. Gee, they didn't just lose a system. They lost time. The invisible kind. The trust of clients who didn't want stories, they wanted control. The rhythm of shipments that once moved like music. The instinct that told people, if Rowan built it, we're safe. The legacy they clung to, it had no architecture. The systems they dismissed, they were the foundation. People ask me sometimes, don't you regret how it ended? No, because it didn't end. It rerouted. Now, when I walk into a conference hall, people don't ask where I worked. They ask what we're building next. Hospitals introduce us not as vendors, but as infrastructure. We don't sell cold chain logistics. We deliver reliability wrapped in silence. Clients never see the algorithms, but they feel their effects when nothing goes wrong. That's the paradox of precision. When it works, people think it was easy. When it disappears, they realize it was everything. As for bridges, some you don't burn. You just stop maintaining them, and time takes care of the rest.